Hai, Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera kepada semua viewers kita pada malam ini. Kembali kita sekali lagi kepada rancangan Jiwa Let's Talk Series dan pada malam ini kita ada special episode by Dato Dr. Amar Singh. Okay, pada malam ini Dato Dr. Amar akan share macam mana untuk build a resilient family in the amidst of COVID-19 pandemic. Alright, sebelum saya masukkan Dr. Amar, izin saya introduce Dr. Amar. Sorry, sekejap ya. Okay. Dato Dr. Amar Singh is a senior consultant paediatrician and dia telah serve in the civil service for more than 35 years and was formerly the head of the pediatric department at Ipoh Hospital and the head of the Clinical Research Center at Perak. So currently, he is very much active as a child advocate and is the recipient of the Outstanding Asian Paediatrician Award 2012 and Senior Advocacy Award 2016. He is also an honorary senior fellow at the Gallen Center for Health and Social Policy. Okay, tanpa melengahkan masa lagi, welcome Dr. Amar. You're in the house. Yeah.
Hi, Arquila.
Okay. Okay, Doctor, are you ready? Can we start?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks, Arquila, and thank you to Jewel for inviting me, Tanam from Jewel for inviting me. I want to thank them for doing the work that they're doing in this women's organization in Johor. And Arquila didn't really introduce herself, but Arquila is a very powerful name. I'm a bird watcher, and Arquila is a Latin word used for many of the very strong Himalayan and steppe eagles. So it's a powerful name to have. So this evening we're talking about how to build a resilient family amidst our COVID-19. And allow me to share a screen with you right now. Okay, fine. Arquila, can see the screen? Can?
Yes, doctor. We can see the screen.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Arquila's introduced me. So let's move on straight away. And I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, just a bit quick update, and then the challenges and impact faced by society and families, and then focus largely on a meaningful response. I'm going to give you a number of suggestions on how we can rebuild our families in this time to last this distance. Now, there's a resource which I'm going to ask Arquila right now to post into Facebook. There are 6 or 7, I think it's about 7 pages now of notes for you, which is a summary of all this talk. In fact, it's probably more than what I'm going to say here during this session. So I hope you will either screenshot that link, or you will copy it from Facebook and download that file for your use. Okay. Right. Now we know that COVID-19 is growing. It's a log scale showing total cases in the world and deaths, and we know that it's just escalating in many countries, including our own. And this is a graph of our epidemic, and you can see early on we had a very small one. Now we have a very large pandemic, and from models internationally, because of our very limited testing, they suggest that we should multiply by 4 our total numbers. Notice again, this is a rolling 7-day average. So this is a smoothened out curve into the jump. So we know that this pandemic is going to last another 1 to 2 years, even with the vaccine present. Here's our day-to-day numbers that many people get worried about, and today it's about 2,000 plus. Okay, again, remember that all this is related to how much we test. The more we test, the more numbers we will see. And so our testing is small. So the numbers are much bigger out there in the community than we know. All right. So we know the mortality is low. Not many people die. Largely people who are older. A few children do die. And some have serious illnesses. And so it's very important that we live in safety bubbles. No real number is safe. And so you should keep the bubble as small as possible. And I'll talk a bit more about safety bubbles towards the end. Our aim is to keep it very low. And I consider it a marathon. It's not a sprint. Initially, we thought it's going to be a very short time. But, some people say another 1 year. Most people say probably 2 to 3 years. And we're going to have intermittent outbreaks, and we want to get our children back to school. But many other things will be difficult, whether we go back to the mosque or the church, or whether we go back to having weddings. All those things will be very difficult. We put a lot of hope in the vaccine. The vaccine has a lot of concerns with it, whether it will really work effectively in the real world. There are mutations like what's happening in the UK right now. Nobody knows how long it will last. We recognize that you can get reinfected. So even with the vaccine, you might still get reinfected. And there are concerns about side effects and something called amplification, which means, whether the vaccine will make you better or worse. All these things have to be sorted out and are being sorted out. So there are good vaccines out there, two good vaccines right now, and people are starting to use them, but we still have to solve some of these issues as we go along. Okay. The biggest problem, of course, with the vaccine is getting it out to all of us. I like this comment from one of WHO's director, saying that getting an effective vaccine is like reaching the base camp of Mount Everest, but the climb to the peak is about delivering the vaccine. So even with this vaccine that we have coming to us right now, we probably get it in March. It probably take half the year to 3/4 of the year to vaccinate even 20-30% of the Malaysian population. So it's going to take time for all of us to get the vaccine. So that's talking about COVID, and it's going to be with us for a while. And for that reason, this last year has been very impactful on society, especially the poor. A lot of individuals have lost their work and lost their income. The environment is significantly affected by plastic pollution, and the significant worsening of mental health that we see all around, increasing child abuse, increasing domestic violence, a lot of people very uncertain about the future and anxious. And we see this for our children. I think it's horrible to have children to wear a mask. It's necessary, of course, but to have them be fearful like this and our own fears for our children as well. So we are exhausted. Most of us are pushed to the limit. The school closures intermittently and especially now prolonged, limits our children's activities. It disrupts their lives and, of course, disrupts our home routine. And so we get thrown together, sometimes for long periods with limited breathing space. Workplaces may be shut down. We may be working from home. Some people lost their jobs. So there's a lot of friction with people living together where previously there's some breathing space by going out to school or to work. And of course, some children are witnessing more violence at home. What I'm most worried, my wife and I are most worried about is all the financial hardship that a significant proportion of our population is facing from job loss and loss of income. So personally, for all of us, we have to deal with our fears. And when we are afraid as adults and as parents, children take on board these fears. They are very sensitive to experiencing our fears. And the fact that we can't relate to our friends as children has negatively impacted our children as well. So a lot of them get distressed, depressed, irritated. Some have talked to me about being fearful of returning to school, and many have poor sleep. And of course, we're worried about their educational needs, and for children with disability, their development needs. I did a similar talk with another group about 2 months ago, and I did a poll there and I asked parents, how are you coping right now? What's your situation? And they answered largely these two ones in red. I'm barely keeping it together. I think I can last this crisis, but it will take a lot of effort. So that's the situation of most adults today. Very few are coping very well or unaffected by this pandemic. Some, of course, feel like giving up. When I asked a question about how are their children coping, and these were the three common answers, I think my children are just coping and require a lot of support. My children seem to be struggling to cope in this pandemic. And of course, the most worrying one is that a significant number of parents said, I'm very worried about my children's mental and emotional health. So other parents are in the same situation that you're in. Their children are struggling and they are thinking of ways on how to help their children survive and cope with this pandemic. I want to again focus on a couple of children that I'm particularly worried about, our families. I'm worried about children with disability who have a tougher time here. I'm worried about our poor who have a much harder time now, and I think we should support them. And of course, migrant families who have come to support our country's development with their job loss. And lastly, families separated by distance, especially those of us separated from our grandparents or other families. I know that some health staff have also are separated from their children because they don't want to bring the bug home to their children. Okay, so this is a summary of where we are today. We have to take a lot of precautions. We are confined largely. Most of us are masked when we are outside the home. We can't live a carefree life like we used to last time. We're very fearful. My wife describes grief as one of the predominant emotions that she feels for many people. There's grief about the loss. There's some anger and despair. And of course, some people are in depression. And the main thing is this hopelessness. We're uncertain about the future. The vaccine has brought some hope, but we're still uncertain what's going to happen the next year to 2 years. So to build resilience, and I'm going to come right now to plunge into what we can do. To build resilience, the key is the parents. Quite often we hope other people will help our children. We hope teachers or other people, healthcare professionals or anyone else, NGOs can help us. But actually the key is the parents themselves. To build resilience, parents must take the stand. So as I said, children are very perceptive. They feel what we are feeling. So if we work to make adjustments for ourselves, we develop our own inner peace, then I think this reality will sink into our children. Our children will feel that their home is an oasis of peace. This will translate into giving them a calmness at home. And so we can't help our children until we help ourselves. I always believe I can't help you unless I have done the same thing. So all the things I'm going to suggest to you tonight, I've done personally for some time. In fact, long before COVID, I've been doing these things. So we have to move forward to a better place so we can bring our children with us. Okay. Now I want to say, as we talk about resilience, that we are three parts, a tripartite being. We've got a body, soul, and spirit, and we need to develop resilience for all three. We cannot just think of the body. We cannot just think of the emotions or mind, the soul. We must also think of the spirit. So we must think of all three. And for the body, we need rest. There must be sufficient rest. And at the same time, we need physical activity. Both come hand in hand. Some of you don't sleeping enough adequately right now and don't have much physical activity. We must deal with our emotions and our mind, must deal with the stress. And finally, of course, we need to find inner peace, which comes in our spirit, which is the core of our being. So to do this, I would suggest that we need discipline. Now, discipline is a very negative word in our country and in our vocabulary because most people think of discipline in terms of punishment. But the real understanding of discipline is a framework to live. Something like this. My wife and I grow a lot of plants. We have a very wild garden, wild urban garden. And if you want to grow creepers, you need a trellis, which means you need a framework that allows the creeper to grow up and show itself. I've chosen a very simple plant here, a morning glory growing on a trellis. So a discipline is a framework to live. So if you have a framework to live, then you can flourish inside that framework. So the discipline needs daily routines. It needs ongoing dialogue in the family, which is not one-off, but daily as well. You need to deal with conflict constructively. You must find creative mechanisms to appreciate and find joy in life. You must live for the moment while we plan for the future. And I think, although I hate this pandemic, I think the pandemic in some ways is also giving us an opportunity to change our family and come together, to open our eyes to truth and reality. And so I'm not blind to what the pandemic is doing. It's largely a negative pandemic, but there are some aspects of it that can allow us to change who we are. Okay. Some of us before the pandemic have been living like this. We have been chasing, the wrong things. I like this quote from Thomas Merton, who's a sifu of mine, somebody I read and value. And he says, people may spend their whole lives climbing the ladder of success, only to find once they reach the top, the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. So Merton is talking again about this picture that I showed you, people chasing money and fame and, wealth and acquisition, houses and cars and all this. All these things are putting your car against the wrong wall, and you need to put your ladder against the right wall. Otherwise, somewhere down the road, you're going to find your life completely empty and meaningless. And we need to teach our children to also put the ladder against the right wall. One wrong decision we have in our world is that we are very competitive. The society has become very ill with competition. Competition in school, competition in work, competition everywhere. I like this thing which I saw on social media. Happiness is a choice. This is the guy who won number one, probably a girl. And here's the one who won number three. And look how happy number three is compared to number one, because number three is happy with anything. Winning a prize was fantastic. Doesn't matter, it didn't get number one. But number one is so unhappy that number three is happy. Yeah? And so many of us are like this, and we need to move to becoming like this chap over here. Now, while I'm going to go on now to talk about the key things that we can do, and I want to remind you that there's no quick fix. Many people are looking for a 1, 2, 3 step models. There's no such thing in life. Anybody who gives that to you is lying to you. We need to build, and it takes time to build. It takes weeks and months, years to change. But change is always possible, and we can do that. I also want to point out that many of us are different persons. And so what may work for one person may not work for another person. So we need to be a little bit open to working with different ways for different people. Our two or three children that we have may be very, very different, as we well know. And so different methods may work differently for different children in our care. Okay? All right. So I'm going to give you practical suggestions. These are lifestyle changes. These are disciplines that if you practice every day and put into place throughout the day and the week can help us build resilience. But they only work if we build good habits in our life. Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is probably the most important, and perhaps the most difficult to do. It's the easiest and most difficult to do. I've been doing this for about 40 years in my life. And this is being silent. It's being present to the eternal. It's just sitting quietly. I'm not too worried if you don't believe in God or who you believe in, but sitting in silence and listening to the eternal divine, the force be with you, is a very meaningful activity. It brings calmness to everyone. This, of course, means sitting in silence, handphone silenced, closing your eyes, and breathing slowly. Now, if you have great difficulty, read the notes I've given you, and talks about how to sit down quietly and just breathe. You just breathe into your nose and breathe out slowly to your mouth, and do this for 5 or 10 minutes. A lot of people ask me, and I've been teaching this to families for many decades, how long to do it. Well, I think 20 minutes is a very good time, but it's very hard to start with 20 minutes. I would say Start with 5 to 10 minutes. Maybe do it twice a day and then work your way from there, sometimes I do this for an hour, sometimes we do it shorter. It's very, very powerful. At the same time, you must remember what is happening with this. I like this word that my wife shared with me a long time ago called emotional tank. We all have an emotional tank, and that tank is limited. If our tank is filled with a lot of negative emotions, then we can't deal with crisis. We can't deal with the problems our children are facing. We can't deal with this pandemic. So this practice of sitting and being silent and growing our calmness is to actually empty our emotional tank of all the negative emotions and filling them with peaceful emotions, with healthy emotions. It builds our well-being. It makes us present to the moment. Now, it can take many forms. I've described the sitting quietly and breathing, but you could take a cup of coffee and tea and sit down and just in your garden and do nothing and just do nothing. The important thing is to do nothing, not to think, not to feel, just to be present to the moment. You could be looking at a beautiful flower and just being present to the flower, and that's fine as well. Remember, the activity is not happening in your mind. I love this word that the Buddhists have got called mindfulness, but I don't believe it's happening in your mind. It's happening in your heart, in your roh, in the core of your being, where this is happening. So I want to recommend this strongly to you, that practicing the presence of the eternal, or just being present to the moment, creative heartfulness daily, is very powerful to decant from us, to drain from us all our negative emotions and fill us with very positive emotions, especially peace and calmness. Okay. Together with it, I would recommend creative solitude. Apart from just being quiet for a couple of minutes twice a day, also consider whether it's possible at home to create some space for yourself, just to do your own thing, just to recharge your batteries. It might mean reading a little bit, or writing a little bit, or doing something you enjoy. What you shouldn't do with this time is play with your handphone or watch a screen, but just do something you enjoy. It could be just working in the garden, something very simple that you can do. Okay. So creative solitude together with spending focused time just being silent with the eternal. The second one is similar to the first, but this one is a gift. The first one is something you do for yourself. The second one is you do for your children. You have to create the space to listen to themselves, and this is called attentive listening. Many of us listen, but we listen with answers already. I call it the tinted glasses kind of response. Before people even speak, we already have an answer, and we judge them by our tinted glasses. We don't listen to them, don't listen to what they're saying in their heart. So you can't just listen to children's voice or what they're saying to us. We must listen to their body language, but you must also listen to what they're not saying to us. So this requires for us to be attentive, to really listen to them. This, of course, must offer children the opportunity to ask questions and talk about their fears and feelings in this time. And it means that we don't give any glib answers. I hate this thing that people say sometimes, don't worry, everything will be okay. This is not useful. Or I understand what you're going through. No, we don't understand what anybody is going through, because everyone is different. So we need to be honest and factual with children. Children know quite a bit. They pick up quite a bit. So we've got to be factual and say, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a mess. COVID-19 is a mess. I'm worried just like you are worried, but I'm here for you. And that's what you can say then. We will see this through. Tell them the real situation. Children need someone who will listen without answering. All adults need this, of course. Husbands need this from wife, wives need this from the husband, and it's a gift. I often say, listen, 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 because we listen to the spoken, we listen to the unspoken body language, and we listen to the behaviors, we listen to the internals of the person. And it's a gift for our children. It's a powerful gift. Quite often when I watch families, what they do is, okay, so makan, okay, go and brush your teeth, then go to your homework. It's kind of like, instructions that we have children. We don't listen very much to them. How was your day at school today? That's probably the kind of communication I hear, rather than just being there and listening to children. So the first one is, listen to the divine, to the eternal, to the force be with you. The second one is listening to your children, give them a gift. The third one is to establish a routine. This is a routine for living. Of course, all I'm talking about is establishing a routine, but this is a routine for living. This I'm talking about all the time. Children in school, even when they are not in school, And routines make us feel secure. Routines reduce emotional liability going up and down. I would have a weekly and a daily routine, and I prefer a visual schedule. You know, right now I have a visual schedule for my tapao food. For lunch, I don't ask my wife not to cook, and I will go and tapao. And I have, a visual schedule of 30 plus places that I can go, and all these places I can buy food from the street. I never enter the shop. I can just keep my container and tapao back. So a visual schedule is very useful for me just to tapao food. But for children, a visual schedule helps them understand what's coming on. I often would get children involved in preparing the visual schedule, and it should involve, of course, sleep times, meal times, study times, nap times, activity times, play times, all these kind of things. Of course, very important to intersperse whatever you're doing, which is work or study, with fun activities. If you are at home, working at home, I've got a one sheet at the end of the document I share with you on how to restructure your life working from home. But I would recommend that you don't work flat out. You work for a while, take a breather with your children, and then come back to work again. One very important thing you should do and structure into the schedule is getting your children involved in the household activities. Again, there should be no gender bias. Boys and girls should do the same thing, whether it's cleaning the toilets or helping with cooking or cleaning the house. I think getting children involved in activities. Of course, the difficulty is getting your spouse. Sometimes men are the hardest to get involved. But it'd be great to get everybody involved in household activities. That will help them feel part of what's happening. Okay, it's important to create in home, work and play spaces with clear boundaries. If you have a separate room, this can be done. Okay, this room is for studying or working, and this other area we can lepak or play. But if you don't have, then use some masking tape on the floor and create maybe a place where there's a small table and a chair. And okay, that's a place that you can sit down and study right now and do some work. Okay, I often tell parents that you need to plan activities that don't need supervision, for children, so that you got some time to yourself. I like non-competitive reward systems for children. I never ask children to compete with each other, but a star chart can be useful to help a child who is especially younger to be motivated. Recognize that all this means that the children also have a regular sleep time, and that sleep time is not 10 or 11 or 12. That sleep time is about 8 or 9 o'clock. Okay, and many children sleep too late, and that disrupts their entire routine and doesn't enable you to build resilience. Parents also should not sleep too late. There is nothing to be gained by checking your social media feed or watching something till very late. Finally, think of one day which is unscheduled. For some children, this is not useful. If you've got a child with disability, with autism, then you may not want to put an unscheduled day because it may disrupt the child considerably. But sometimes it's good to have a fun day where it's unscheduled, and you can tell children, okay, what shall we plan today? And let's do something really unusual today, and maybe cook something really spectacular, or complicated, or maybe just do a very meaningful game that you can play at home. So that's number 3, a strict daily routine that enables you to grow. This is the routine that brings a lot of security and reduces emotional liability. Okay. The 4th one is the life of little joys, is what I call it. This is taking joy in small things. Too often we are trained to take joy in big things. We're looking for big successes, and we fail to take joy in small things. I spend a lot of time in nature and jungle. Twice a week I'll be in the jungle. I spend the mornings twice a week disconnecting from the whole world in the jungle. But you could do it in your own garden or in a park. Okay? And nature has a very profound effect on us. It's endless variety and beauty. It can teach us about hope and life. And it's small things that can touch us. This kind of jungle that I walk in. Okay, when you do this, getting into your garden or going out for a walk in a park or nature, you actually can forget COVID for a while. You can expand some physical activity. And you must look deeply. It might be the birds in your garden. These are a small segment of the birds in our garden. Many of them are friends, so we know them very well. We've created a garden which is conducive for them, and many of them will come, and like this bird here, this is a pink-necked green pigeon who's nesting, and that's a lovely babette. We constantly hear in our garden bee eaters that visit us twice a day. A very, very common bird, yellow-vented bulbul, which is a good friend. And so these birds, with their beauty and diversity and their behavior, help us learn quite a bit when we watch them. Or it might be wildflowers. These are Malaysian wildflowers. I wrote a small book on Malaysian wildflowers, and many people don't know that our flowers are all tiny, beautiful flowers. Most of the flowers that we have in our country are imported flowers, all the big showy ones that we have. But our own flowers are very tiny and extremely beautiful, and they're fascinating to look at. Okay. Uh, Here's an example of what I mean by looking deeply. I saw this orchid when I was walking in the jungle. It had fallen down onto the ground from broken branch, and I brought some home because I didn't want to let it die out on the road. I put the rest up where best I could. And after a couple of months of my wife caring for it, it flowered. And then I recognized it was the Adriaris orata, which means the child of the air. It's a very hard orchid to grow in the lowlands. It's very, very fragrant, phenomenal fragrance. And I think the orchid bloomed to tell us, to say thank you to us for rescuing it. And now it's growing in our garden. So small things like that can bring great joy to you. Here's a small insect in my garden, which I wrote an article about, teaching me a lot about how a juvenile, a baby, can survive. And here's something that we spotted recently. It's a bird nest fungus. It's a very tiny fungus, like cupcakes, and when raindrops fall in, all the seeds get dislodged. You don't see it very often, but it's very beautiful fungus. So look deeply. It's a life of little joys. Each one of these brings great joy to us. The thing we see is very small, but the joy and what we receive from it is significant. The fifth discipline I suggest to you is have a regular physical routine. Physical routines are very important for well-being. They impact not just your physical well-being, but your mental and emotional well-being as well. I would say do it daily. It's 20-30 minutes is what we're looking at. It might be a walk, a jog, skipping, stretching. We are fortunate, my wife and I, to live on a dead-end road. And so since COVID started, we have been doing our dead-end road. Our neighbors, fortunately, sleep a bit later than we do. So we have the road to ourselves very early in the morning. We wake up very early, to watch stars. And then after that, after breakfast, we just go and do a 20-30 minute jog or walk. Usually can do about 3 to 4 kilometers in that time. And that's very, very profound for us. It's very formative. On weekends, we will also cycle about 30 kilometers. So wearing a mask. So this could be a very fun activity that family could do, okay? And bring the family together. But its impact on you physically is significant. Sixthly, something that is important to do that not people do, it's important to reduce your screen time and increase your connections. You need to be creative in spending time together. Now, when we say reduce screen time, people just say, okay, it's makan time, we won't look at screen. No, it's many other times than that. Consider doing different things. Consider reading a book, playing a game together, which is not a computer game, cooking together, doing a jigsaw puzzle, or ask children what they like to do. Many people focus on quality time with children. I don't believe in that. I believe in quantity time with children. You need to lepak with your child. Only when you lepak with your child, have prolonged time, will your children actually talk to you about what's most important in their heart. This is the average Malaysian family having lunch. They look like this, and I'm sure many of our families are also like this even at home. And I did one study. I've done a couple of studies on screens, and one study showed that average 2-year-old in Malaysia, spend 6 hours on a screen a day. And this study is a couple of years old, but 4 years old. I can imagine now it's gone up to 8 hours, and with COVID even higher. And I suspect when archaeologists come to our era and dig in the future, they will find us like this, in the grave, even in the grave, holding onto our phone. So we are addicted to our screens. But these are children that I met in the Himalayas who have no screens. And they are so alive. They talk a lot to us. They're happier, they're freer children than our children are because they don't have screens. Okay. So most of us are addicted to electronics and social media. For children to change, again, parents need to change first. You need to practice screen-free days and screen-free moments. For screen-free days, I recommend at least one screen-free day for the family, but perhaps twice might be very good. And what does this mean? During this time, you don't have a device that you're carrying, except maybe your handphone if you're going out. You turn off all your Wi-Fi and data plan. Just leave your phone on, so all your notifications silent. Only people can only reach you if they call you. So emergencies can still reach you. Don't take any pictures. We have enough pictures in this world. Just keep them in your heart, and then spend time with your children. You might want to pack some lunch. Go out, enjoy nature, and listen to each other. At the same time, I also want to say, try not to look at your phone first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and during meals. There's a specific reduction in screen time all throughout the week. Okay. Lastly, one more thing that's about screen is we look at a lot of COVID information, and perhaps once a day update is sufficient. Otherwise we get over COVID saturated. And our media is actually definitely COVID saturated right now. So reduce your screen time. 7, celebrate life, have fun. I've talked about the life of little joys, but look for things to celebrate. Look for surviving another month of MCO. Having sufficient in life, still having your job, that we are loved, that we have a home. This gives us a sense of hope. So celebrate the small things. Don't just wait for big events to celebrate. 8, connect with your loved ones. People who are away from home. Some of us have separated from our older relatives because we want to keep them safe in their own COVID bubble. And I want to say that, that's a good thing to do, but we need to connect with them, and perhaps once a day, video chat or a call or messaging. I think the video chat is probably the best for grandparents and older people. Okay, they also need our connection. Number 9 is a bit unusual one, but I want to share it with you because I think it's something that's been very meaningful for my wife and me. If you want to grow resilience, you also got to look at supporting other people in meaningful ways. Some of us are not so impacted financially. We've got our job security and our financial security, so we need to meet the food security of people who don't have it. And I think if we do this, we will grow our children, give them a great example, but get them involved in it, and of course grow our societal strength. This could mean, of course, donating to ang paos, employing people who are out of work, donating to NGOs, giving ang paos away. Everybody who comes to our door gets an ang pao. Any person who's come to deliver anything to us. And this is one of the many NGOs we support in Ipoh. They give away food to people. Now because of the MCO, they've stopped this. Now they do home delivery of food to people who need it. Huge number of people come to pick up food. So support others. It's a meaningful way to build our resilience. Okay. And finally, you need a network. You need a support network. There's no reason to walk this journey alone. Sometimes one of the spouse may not be your support network, sadly. I hope that our spouse and our children are part of our support network. Not always true. So sometimes you need other people, and this might be a chat group that you have. I'm sorry, I wrote this for disabled people as well. It might be people who, close friends, might be your schoolmates. It might be your NGO kaki. It's a good group for ventilating frustration, sharing the pain, the struggle, and also talking about how to manage your children's behavior and sharing resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's very important. There are lots of NGOs out there who can offer help to us. Keep a list of good organizations you call for help, whether it's Befrienders or whether it's Jewel or Women's Center for Change in Penang or WAO in KL. Keep emergency numbers also of health personnel in case you have a health concern that you need. Okay, so recognize that you need other people to walk this journey. I believe that you need both a group as well as a one-to-one. Sometimes the group is not what meets your need, and it might be a person, a friend who you can really talk to. Okay. Consider also, when we're talking about support system, to develop your own COVID safety bubble for your children. What's a safety bubble? A safety bubble is a few people who you trust very much, who are very fussy about their safety profile. They wear masks everywhere. They might even wear a face shield like I do, a mask and a face shield. They clean their hands all the time when they're out. So these are people who you can trust. And if you've got a few families like this, it might be 2 or 3 families, then you could consider meeting together. So your children can interact with their children. It gives you a break, a respite for the parents, but it gives the children a great chance to socialize and develop some very deep, meaningful friendship. I recommend this significantly this time. For this next 1 year, we may need some of this to keep our children going. It might mean it's got to be people close by. You can't be driving across town to have this happening. Okay. So I've talked about 10 things. Building your own resilience by sitting in silence. The gift of attentive listening to your children. Keeping to a daily routine and writing it out and visually displaying it preparing your children so that you can grow around and grow through that routine. Having a life of little joys, of enjoying nature and other things that can help you uh, move forward, not just constantly thinking of the negative things that are coming our way this day. COVID-19 is very negative. Physical activities that build well-being, reducing your screen so you don't get overwhelmed with messages. By the way, I silence almost everything, even when I am using my phone. Only my handphone is on. Almost every notification except the ones that come from my wife are silenced. Celebrate, have fun, small things. Bake a cake for no good reason except that you're alive. Maybe do what, like Alice in Wonderland, celebrate every day, not just your birthday. That's what my wife and do. We never celebrate our birthday or anniversary. We celebrate every day. Connect with loved ones away from home. They may need your support, especially the older ones. Support others. They need our support. And this actually is a gift you're giving yourself inadvertently without you even knowing. And finally, develop a support network. Get access to a support network of individuals. Again, that link is back down there. And the link is also should be available in your Facebook. Arquila should have posted it there. I want to say that during this time, we must move away from survival. A lot of people are waiting for COVID-19 to end, then they will live. No, move away from just survival, move to resilience and growth. Allow this very difficult time to be used by us to become really strong and grow like we never did before. Move away from waiting for COVID to end. I think many people are living on a pause button to living meaningfully today. That means live in the present moment today. Yeah, we may not be able to do all the things we planned. We can't go on holiday, and some children's education may be affected, and lots of our future things are affected by this. Doesn't mean we can't live meaningfully in the present moment today. Move away, use COVID-19 for us to move away from false construct to true reality. That means we can be really honest with each other. Strip away all the false things that we were doing last time. Don't chase the wrong things, chase the true things. And finally, move away from a COVID-saturated world to a more holistic one where we look at everything and come back to building our family, our society, and of course, our nation as well. Okay. I wrote this in September, but I like to read it to you because I think it's meaningful. I wrote it for myself and for others. The unique challenge of COVID-19 pandemic requires all of us as families to change our lifestyle, change our daily routines, re-establish relationships while we chart the unknown. This work is one that is not static but evolving and progressing. It requires learning from each other as we share our struggles. It requires transparency and honesty at a level we may not have established in our relationships in the past. It's not merely a meeting of the needs of the individual family members, but transcending that to develop new capacities as interdependent individuals, discovering new strength in each other and in God. Independency is not a high level of functioning. Interdependent is a very high level of functioning where we require each other, where families depend on each other, where children depend on parents and parents depend on children. Okay, and that's a very powerful family to have. This is what true family resilience would look like, not a mere weathering of the storm, waiting for COVID-19 to end, or waiting for this adversity to go past, but a transformation. And I think this will hold us in strong state for the future. I want you to remember always that the pandemic does not change who we are. We are the much loved, the beloved children of God, all of us. And we need to grow even deeper into this reality. And COVID-19 has offered this opportunity to come back to this reality and live deeply in it. I want to acknowledge that these thoughts I share with you, which I have been practicing for much of my life, is not my own. I have learned enormously from children and parents. They've impacted my life. They've taught me, I've often been the patient and they have been the doctor. They have been my trainer and I've just been the recipient. I have been in the school of life. I appear to have been worked and to be a consultant, but all the while I was a recipient learner. And I want to share that, I often heard people talk, the children are our future. No, I don't think that's exactly true. Children are our present treasure, and we need to actually enjoy them in this present moment. I end with this sunrise taken from my roof. I watch a lot of sunrises. I watch thousands of sunrises. They fill me with great hope. They're one of the little joys, which are great joys for me every day, and I share that with you as another thing that we could look at. Okay. I'm going to stop staring here and come back to Arquila, and let's take some questions from individuals.
Yeah, okay. So everybody, our viewers, if you have any questions that you would like to ask that Dr. Amar tonight, please feel free to write your questions in the comment section, and then Dr. Amar will go through one by one. Okay. Thank
And
you, Dr.
Arquila, remember, it's just Amar, and everybody out there, remember, it's just Amar is fine. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Okay. Thank you.
Amar,
Thank you, Amar, for your sharing tonight. It was very great. I have a question myself.
sure.
Okay. So in many of your slides, actually, I have a few questions lah already. One of it is, you did say about we should spend time with our children,
Mm-hmm.
to quantity time rather than
Yeah,
quality time. Because
yeah.
nowadays, of course, when both of the parents are working, they just
Mm-hmm.
continue to, as long as I dah habiskan quality time with my
Mm-hmm.
children, then that's
Yes,
it lah. That's the case. But I need
yeah,
rest.
yeah.
So what if sometimes when children wants our attention, they get into an argument,
Yeah.
and then of course they want you to pick sides. So as a
Mm-hmm.
parent, I mean, in that situation, how should we respond?
Okay, thanks, Aquila. I'd like to say that, if let's come back to the quality and quantity time for a moment. Imagine that, Aquila, you and your husband, would you like your husband to give you some quality time? Okay, darling, I'm going to give you 15, 20 minutes every day, and that's it. I think we'd be very unsatisfied as a spouse. We would like our spouse to spend time with us, a lot of time. To say they love us many times a day, to give us a hug, to be present to us. So, same thing with our children. We know that modern day life today has killed some of that, but doesn't mean we cannot regain it back again. And sometimes what may be necessary is that the spouses take turn. The husband may go and cook, and the wife may with the kids, and then they may switch over. This is one way to offer children a bit more time. Now, coming back to your question about how to deal with children who have conflict with each other, and what should I say? Ask you to take sides. I don't think I will take sides with children. I will actually ask them to, sit down with me and let's talk this through, and listen to both sides of the story, and ask them to try and help, come to a decision about compromise with each other. I think unless something is actually wrong, that somebody has done something that's wrong, one of the children. Otherwise, I think we should allow them to recognize that they're different and have different viewpoints, and neither may be fully right or fully wrong, and we have to support each other. I have got a slide on conflict, and we'll see, Aquila, there are not enough questions. We'll go to that slide.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Amar, for answering that. We have another question. Can you see the question?
Yes, I can. Yes, Jean Lee, thank you for this wonderful question. Children used to laugh more than adults, and now children are laughing less. How serious is this? Oh, I think it's extremely serious. That's why I showed those children from the Himalayas who laugh a lot. I could also show you Aurangzeb children that I've taken pictures, many pictures of, who also laugh a lot more than our children do. Huh? They laugh because they're more carefree. They're less busy with the screens that are in front of them. I'm not against screens. I think screens have a purpose. My personal policy on screens, which is an international kind of guideline, is that 0 to 2, no screens. 2 years to 5 years, maybe a maximum an hour a day with the parent around, supporting the child while watching the screen. 5 to maybe 11, a bit more of the screen to help with schoolwork and so on. And after 12, we let them monitor their own screen time, because by that time they know how to use the screen wisely, if you've done all this. So I won't just blame screens. I blame society is changing. In Ipoh, for example, children by 4 years old have tuition and homework, and I think that's kind of, when I think about it, how ridiculous it is. I remember that I could finish all my school homework in primary school at school before I came home, and when I came home, I just did what I want. I played hide and seek. I went fly kites. I went for walks. Spend time with my friends. So children today are no longer children. We've made them into a busy factory of studying and working. And then I remember seeing this 7-year-old girl who had major depression. And why was she depressed? Because she had no time. I mapped out her whole week. besides school, she had tuition and then ballet and piano and all sorts of things parents had filled her life with, and she had no free time, not even time to watch television. And so she was depressed because she didn't have a childhood. And so I had to ask the parents to break that and give her some childhood. So I would recommend to parents today to give their children back to childhood and spend that childhood with your children as well. Stop chasing the useless things. If you don't spend time with your children today, you may not have them tomorrow.
Okay, we have another question coming right up.
Yeah, thanks, Tanan. That's a very powerful question. Children coping with stressed out parents at home. Any advice when the parents resort to explosive temper? Very difficult if you're a child. I think if you're a teenager and more capable, I think what happen is your parents explode. You should take a time out quickly. If it's possible, if you got your own room, which is not possible for everybody, then maybe just go to your room and close the door. And that's one way to let the storm pass and then come out. But not every parent is going to tolerate them, and some may come and bang on your room door and ask you not to ignore them. As I said, the movement forward is your parent. So for other children who don't have access to this or who are younger, then I think they need to reach out. Reaching out is not easy in our country. We have a hotline, the 15999 teledraw hotline, but I'm not sure how effective that's really going to be for these children. I would suggest, reach out to someone that you trust as a child and ask them to be your advocate to help you. Again, that's a two-edged sword. Some parents don't take very well for advocacy. They may be very upset if someone interferes in the family. But if your parent becomes physically violent, aggressive physically, then I think you will have to do that, and there must be some intervention. So first of all, try and get a timeout. Secondly, try and reach out for help. Thirdly, if it becomes violent, get concerted help so that you can be kept safe. Not an easy solution. I wish we had a better social structure. I wish our welfare department was full of social workers, thousands of social workers who we could then reach out to come and visit our home and talk to our parents about how to discipline their children safely.
Okay, you have greetings from Chennai.
Thank you very much.
And also,
Yes.
a lot of people saying hi
Hi.
from
Hi,
LinkedIn.
everyone. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. And also hi from Dr. Kamal.
Hi.
That's my father.
Oh, hi. Okay, all right.
Okay. All right. Next question.
Yes, thanks, Kamala Gopal. This is a problem. Many of us foresee this with online classes. Children are seeing the screen more than their parents' face. Some of us are working, trying to work with the education minister to bring children back to school. I think that getting children back to school is an important part of what we should do in this coming year. We could have done it even right now. I do not believe that continuing online for children long term is healthy for them. Especially with some children. I saw this UNICEF study from the inner city, which showed that 1 in 5 children does not want to go back to school anymore. And so I think that's a worry for me, that if you stay at home too long, you may not want to go back and you may remain isolated. So there are many concerns with using the screen excessively at home. You lose the social interaction that we have from seeing each other. We can have some social interaction from screens, but I think it's going to be very limited compared to the kind of friendships that we have in class. So I think that the key is to work together, push our SOPs really hard and strong, support the school through the Parent-Teacher Association to get the school into shape and get back our children to schools physically.
Okay, we have a question here. And her question is almost the same as what I was going to ask you earlier. About peer pressure from class 1 is robbing their childhood. Parents are under tremendous pressure too, so the joy of studying vanishes.
Yeah. Could you leave the question there for a moment, Arquila?
Sure.
Prerana, I hope I pronounced that name correctly. It's definitely true. But again, that's why I gave the quote from Merton. Do we need to follow this? Do we need to follow the rat race? So what is our hope and dreams in life? Let me try and answer this question in a different way. what is the markers of success? I often ask myself, I've thought about this deeply for many decades, and the success that people look at is acquisition, wealth, fame, popularity, that kind of things, power. That's the kind of things that people think they're successful if they've got a great profession, if they got two houses and a Mercedes Benz, if they got lots of money in the bank and rich things. But I consider that not markers of success. To me, markers of success are three things. The first thing is you have a good relationship with God or the eternal or divine or whatever you would like to call that. Secondly, you have a good relationship with yourself. You know who you are. And thirdly, you have a good relationship with a few people, a few friends who are your really close, wonderful soul friends. I think if you have these three things, you are very, very rich. You're very, very successful. Very few people have these actually. Very few people have friends who are so intimate and they can trust with all their life. Very few people have a deep knowledge of themselves and are at peace with themselves. Most people are not at peace with themselves. That's why we have so many mental problems and psychiatric disorders. And very few people are really in touch with the divine. They may have a construct of God or some idea of that, but they don't have an intimate relationship with God. So I suggest that we don't chase these things. There's no need to. We can survive. I calculated how much I can survive on in a month, and my wife and I try and give everything else away as much as we can because we don't need very much to live on. So I don't think we need to strive and struggle. A little bit we need, but the rest I think is an excess. So perhaps bring back the joy of that. I'm so glad that I never had tuition in my life.
Okay, Lee Jin says, thank you, Dr. Amar, for responding to the questions on children laughing less. And okay, according to Lee Jin, I just want to share to all our viewers tonight that Johor Bahru Happy and Joyous Club has daily Zoom laughter for about 30 minutes. And if any of you are interested, you can join their Zoom ID and password is right over here. So all the viewers, if you are interested to join the daily Zoom laughter, Dr. Amar, have you joined this daily Zoom laughter?
No, no, but I have written a book on jokes. I wrote a book on Abing jokes.
I see.
Yeah. I of course collected some of them. Nobody actually owns jokes. I've noticed that no one owns jokes, so I collected from different people, plus wrote some of my own and put together. So I do. My wife and I do laugh quite a bit actually. A lot of things bring joy and humor to us.
Yeah. Okay, so do you like live your life believing the what they say? Laughter?
Yes, I think that, yeah, but there are lots of things to look at. I believe in a deeper joy than the superficial laughter. I laugh superficially on the outside, yes, but I believe in having a life of joy inside. That means you're constantly, it's not a mental construct of being positive, but you're actually filled and happy inside. I don't know what words to use for it. Now, Jewel Malaysia has a comment. Working from home and schooling from home has the effect of blurring boundaries, especially for working women and mothers, bounded by traditional homemaking duties as well. How do we split the workload? Joel, you know the answer as well as I do. We hope that fathers will come on board and share the workload. Older siblings, older children can also do this as well. But we have a long way to go in our country, very paternalistic. And, women have two jobs, which is a tough thing to do. So I think we need to break this thinking. It is starting to happen with some men, but it's not across the board. So I encourage more men to actually take responsibility at home. And I'm sure my wife is listening to me while I'm talking. And, making the effort to share the burden. Again, I would think, look at your household tasks, and some things are unnecessary. I often tell my wife, we don't need everything spick and span. We need to do the essentials. And any time that my wife can find for breathing, I will create, which is why, for example, I make sure I buy lunch all the time so that my wife doesn't have to cook lunch. She cooks one major meal a day, which is dinner, and breakfast is just easy, it's toast. We make it simple. So I think create a simpler lifestyle so that your home burden drops. But sharing this burden with the spouse and your older children uh, is good. I think by the time they're 5 to 7, they can start take on board some of the household responsibilities, a chore that's on their their list of things to do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. So just now, I really envy the way you live your life. it is very simplicity and you really like to connect with the nature. So do you have an advice for people who, kita tak pernah berkebun ataupun tahu
Mhm.
anything about plant. So like if we want to connect with the nature and start to bertanam, which is actually good during this pandemic, any advice?
Well, start with what's in your garden. I think there are different kinds of people. There's some people who might have nice garden, and some people who might live in a flat and have no garden or only be renting a room. There, I think then you need to start looking at some simple plant that you can bring into your rented room or into your apartment. I think there are some hardy plants that can live without too much care, and I would start with them first. Huh? For those who got a garden, then I would say experiment with a wild garden rather than a too cultivated a garden. My wife and I let the birds bring many of the plants. We plant some. We've got quite a few trees. We have about 60, 70 species of birds that visit our garden. We are in heart of Ipoh, and we have lots of insect life. We try not to kill the insects because the insects bring the birds, and the insects don't really harm us at all, and they're wonderful to watch. So experiment in a wild garden. My loves moss, so we have a lot of moss actually growing in the garden, which is quite wonderful. So I don't really have any rules for you. We have a compost heap as well. A compost heap is quite useful to put away all your vegetables and your leaves droppings and all that, so that they can become soil back again for your garden. So we have a couple of simple things that we do, but the thing is, don't go for ornamental things. Go for things that are wild. That's probably more meaningful.
Thank you, Dr. Amar. Okay, last questions before our session ends for tonight. All right, so I just want to ask, how can we advise parents who is going through, like, sometimes parents doesn't realize that they hurt their teenagers
Mm-hmm. Yep.
emotionally, or like they doesn't realize that probably they are being ignorant towards the
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, that eventually cause the teenagers to run away from home,
Yep.
or in the worst case scenario, some of them even committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
how can we help how can we help both the teenagers from, number one, don't run away from home, and number two, do not harm yourself, and then how can we help the parents to help the children?
That's a very large question, Akila. And I want to come back to what you said in the first question that you asked about, you know, um, about children and conflict and how children act up sometimes to get attention. I believe that, children have what we consider bad behavior because they want our attention. Often parents are not there for them, and children then will actually, act out to get our attention. So it's better to do the reverse, to actually give them attention rather than waiting for bad behavior, which you then have to correct. In terms of children who emotionally feeling very neglected, I believe that as parents, we must not emotionally blackmail our children. Many times we do that subtly without knowing. Mommy, I love you, score 4 A's. That's emotional blackmail as far as I'm concerned. Or sometimes we might say out of frustration when we're very angry, I wish I had never given birth to you. All these kind of things are extremely deeply hurting to individuals. So we need to do the opposite. We need to actually often tell our children that we love them. This is not something that is a cultural thing, something that's necessary. Different children have different language of love. Some children receive love verbally, some receive it physically, some receive it more creative ways by gift giving or the attention of our time. So we need to look for many opportunities to give love to our children verbally, physically, our time, creatively, by gifts and other things. And I think if children receive love from us continually, many times a day, throughout the time, then they will know that they are very much loved, and whatever happens in their life, they can still turn to us. Even simple things like saying thank you very much for making the bed today, or clearing the dishes, or washing the dishes. All these kind of thank yous are extremely important. Must never take anybody for granted, not your wife or your children, and always thank them. The most serious ones, the one who run away or try to harm themselves, I think that obviously implies there's been long-standing, problems in that child's life, And either that's a family problem or a personal problem. It may not necessarily be the family, it could be friends, or it could be other crises that the child is facing. But if we have an open family where children are allowed to talk about anything, we don't react negatively immediately. When child tells us something they've done, we don't immediately say, "Oh, that's wrong. Why do you do that?" and get angry with them. But we listen and we try and understand them. I think then children will tell us things and prepared to tell us even their uh, deep pain is in their heart. So there's no easy quick fix for this. For those who have uh, tendency to run away or harm with them, I think we need external help to support them at that time.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Dr. Amar, do you have any extra slide that you would like to share?
It's okay. I've talked about some of that here, so let's leave that alone. I don't want to keep people too late, in them. Yeah, I tend to sleep about 9 and I tend to wake up at 4 in the morning because I find the mornings are very quiet. Everybody is asleep and we can watch the stars, have a casual breakfast, lepak breakfast under the
Mm.
stars. And I think that kind of is formative for the family. Yes. Mm.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Amar, for being here tonight with us. Okay, we are so honored to have you on our platform, and maybe next year we will invite you again for another sharing session if you are alright with that.
Yes, sure it is.
Yeah. Okay. I hope all the viewers tonight, get really good info from Dr. Amar, just like how I learned. Okay. Sleep at 9 a.m. and up at 4 a.m. Legend said, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask you, what
Legit
time?
is the same as waking. It's the same as sleeping at 12 o'clock and waking up. At 7 o'clock. It's about the same thing. Just adjust.
Mm,
Just that the early hours in the morning are quiet, and I love stars. So I find stars feed me. My wife and I see about 60, 70 shooting stars, meteorites on an average year. Yeah, without trying very hard. And of course, there's a lot of beauty in just the seeing the permanency of the stars. Gives you a sense that things are permanent. Whatever we're going through is a small, tiny thing right now, and it will go past. COVID will pass. Yes.
yes, it will.
Mm.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, and all our viewers tonight, thank you for tuning in. If you want to donate on Jewels Fund, our account number is CIMB 8601567402 for Pertubuhan Pergerakan Wanita Johor Projects. Alright. So thank you, Doctor, for coming in tonight.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Arquila. Take
everybody.
care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.